Hey everybody, I'm here for an AMA, an impromptu session. One of the most common questions I see asked by podcast editors is it's some variation of how do you find clients? This is probably the single biggest pain point that freelancers face when they're trying to get started. But it doesn't only affect new freelancers. This is a common question with editors who've been doing this for a longer period of time. Maybe it's something that's been a side hustle and they want to go full time, but they don't have enough clients to do it. Or they're trying to find or fill out their roster so they can go full time. If this is a question that you have, how do you find clients? How do I find more clients? Well, you're in the right place because I've got the secret formula for you that works. And it works for me and it works for you. It works for everybody. Actually, I don't. And nobody else really does either. But I'm sure you've seen others say that when they're trying to sell you a course or a membership to their community. There is no single path that is guaranteed to work for everybody. Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm a podcast editor who's been editing for 6 years now. I've seen firsthand how the industry has changed over that time period. Some of those changes, they've impacted some of us and others not so much. This is why it's so much more challenging to decide who to listen to when it comes to advice on how to find clients. Someone who's been doing this for 10, 15, 20 years, they got started in a much different industry than someone who's starting out this year or started out last year or a couple years ago. I've heard many stories about editors who essentially backed into editing as a career simply by editing their own podcast. Back then, it was easier to build a roster of clients simply from word of mouth because it was a very highly specialized skill offered by very few people. I wish I'd known about podcast editing back then because I would have jumped in head first. I didn't really know it was a thing until 2020. At that time, it was still a pretty specialized skill. You had to know how to clean up audio using tools like RX and know how to use a DAW to edit and mix things. Fast forward to today, and it's no longer a specialized skill. Knowing how to use RX, it's not really needed anymore. I haven't touched RX in years. There are apps and plugins that have simplified this and removed that learning curve that came with having to use RX. Using a DAW, it's not really needed either. You have text-based editors like Descript and Riverside. So that has reduced the barrier to entry so that all anybody needs is a computer and a subscription to Descript or Riverside, and now they're an editor. This means there are more editors than ever before. That means more editors we're competing with. You may already know all of this, but it's important context before we start talking about finding clients because it explains a lot of the pain that you've been experiencing as a freelancer. Get this out of the way. The truth is, there isn't an easy or proven method that works for everybody. This really is a situation where we have to find the way or the ways that work best for ourselves. What worked for one person may not work for you. And what worked for someone 15 years ago might not work for them if they were getting started today. Okay, so let's start with the basics. Come on, wake up. Not sure why my trusty Stream Deck, not so trusty, I guess, isn't working. Oh well. So there are two general ways to generate leads: inbound and outbound. Let's start with outbound. Examples are you respond to job posts, networking, so stuff like conferences, meetups, social media. You've got cold outreach. The most common one is emails. You reach out to people who've never heard of you, you have never had contact with, and you email them and try to start a conversation. Referrals, actually, referrals aren't really outbound. So we need to cross that off. That was meant to be in the different category. Oh no, why'd that go away? And then we've got marketplaces, so things like Fiverr and Upwork. Outbound, basically what that means is you go to the customer, you reach out to them, you initiate the conversation. Outbound works for a lot of people. Let's look at some of these one by one. One of the most common things that people do when they first start out is you scour the internet for people posting that they want an editor. So say somebody posts in Facebook, hey, I've got a podcast and I need an editor. You respond to that. That's outbound, or outbound lead generation. You're reaching out to them because they said, hey, I've got a job. The issue there is 8,322 other editors are responding to that ad. So you've got what, like a 0.000129% chance of even getting a conversation with that podcaster. The odds are really stacked against us when we respond to job posts. You might be able to get a job, but chances are, if you're not one of the first people to comment, and you're not the cheapest or not within their budget range, chances are you're not going to go anywhere. And when people post jobs like this, they can shop on price, and chances are that's usually what they're doing. So let's move on to networking. A lot of people have really good experience getting clients through networking. One way I see a lot of people mention is going to conferences. The first thing to realize is you probably don't want to go to podcast conferences to try to find editing clients. I know that may seem a little contradictory, but if you go to like Podfest or Podcast Movement, there's going to be hundreds of other editors there trying to also find clients. So you're still competing with a ton of people. For lead generation to become easier, we want to minimize the number of people we're competing with in any given space. So if you're going to go to conferences, niche down. Figure out what types of shows you want to work with, what types of clients, and look for conferences aimed at those. Let's say you want to work with photographers. You go to a photographer's conference. Chances are there aren't going to be many podcast editors there. There might be a ton of people with podcasts or thinking about starting podcasts at that photographer's conference. So now you're competing with far fewer people. It's going to be easier for you to have conversations and be memorable to them if they have a podcast. Similar to conferences, you've got meetups. A lot of local areas have business or small business meetups. That's a good way to generate leads because, hey, we all live in the same place. You have a business. I can help you with your content marketing if you have a podcast. And then another way you can network is digitally. You can use social media, YouTube. I mean, there's various ways you can network with people online. So it's not entirely relegated to in-person type stuff. One of the biggest cons with the conferences, though, is, especially if it's not local to you, is the cost. You've got transportation, whether that's airfare, you drive out, there's costs there. You've got accommodations, food. Conferences can be expensive, but at the same time, if you come away with 1 or 2 new clients, that pays for itself. Okay, so So with inbound, we've got marketing, and that's going to include stuff like your website and SEO, content marketing, like podcasts, YouTube, stuff like that, ads, email. You've got referrals and word of mouth, and you've got the marketplaces. We know we had marketplaces in Outbound, but they can also be inbound because you can set up a profile and people can go and reach out to you. So let's start with the marketing aspect. You've got your website. People do Google searches. Hey, I need a podcast editor. Let's go to Google and see who's out there. That's why your SEO really comes into play. The higher you rank on the SEO search rankings on the Google page, the more likely you are to get people reaching out to you. Content marketing, this is a pretty good one because it, especially if you're trying to offer podcast editing services, it gives you a really good example of what you're capable of doing. It shows that you understand podcasting because you are a podcaster. It shows that you understand how to edit, how well you can edit, because they can listen, they can watch your podcast. Ads, these are a little more tricky for services because they do cost money, and you have to have a really good understanding of who you're trying to target and how to really target your ads. But they can be effective if you have a good strategy. And then you've got email marketing. This would be building up a mailing list with lead magnets and I don't know, my brain just went blank. But email marketing has been proven to work for keeping yourself top of mind. I wouldn't just focus on sending out a bunch of emails about podcast editing because your clients probably don't care about that. What would work better is giving them a reason to sign up for your mailing list. Give them useful information. And a lot of times that's going to be tips and tricks on how to improve your podcast. That's going to provide value and keep you top of mind. Maybe you want to include podcast industry news. It's about figuring out your audience and what type of email content they're going to find valuable. And do not just spam them to death. That's just going to get them to stop paying attention or unsubscribe. Referrals and word of mouth, those are probably the easiest forms of inbound because, let's be honest, you don't really have to do anything. The problem, though, is that they're unreliable. You don't have any control over when they come. And if you are in a situation where you need another client, word of mouth and referrals probably aren't going to always be available. They're not going to be there when you need them. And again, with marketplaces, we talked about those. So those are the two basic ways you can find clients. And I glossed over it. Inbound is where the clients come to you. Outbound, you go to them. Inbound, they come to you. Once they've found you, or you've found them, again, everything basically comes back to your website, your digital presence. So if you don't have a website, it's going to be harder for you to land clients because when you talk to someone, you meet somebody, generally they're going to want to look into you. Best place is the website. It's going to show people who you are, what you're about, who you work with, and ideally give them an idea of how much it's going to cost to work with you. So your website is very valuable to you. Too many freelancers think of it as an afterthought, or they don't put much effort into it. And let's think about this. If you're shopping for a service provider for whatever, do you look at their websites? What does a website tell you about them? If you look at 3 different companies and one has a really sleek, modern-looking website, another one has a pretty standard WordPress template-looking website, and then you have one that's basically a single page with contact info. What's the basic page with just contact info tell you about this person? To me, it tells me this person either has so much business they don't even need a website, so they don't care. It also tells me if that's not the case, they're either cheap and aren't willing to put the time and money into building a decent looking website, or they just don't care. Either way, I'm probably not going to reach out to them. I'll probably reach out to the other 2 because they show that they at least take a little bit of pride in what they do. They care about their business and putting a little bit of effort into showing you that they care and trying to make it easier for you to make a decision. Part of what goes into a good website, outside of the visuals of it, is your branding and your messaging. This can really help you stand out because if I'm a podcaster and I'm looking to hire an editor, I might check out 5 or 10 editors. If all of them are if the websites for all of them are telling me the same thing, it's making it tougher for me to make a decision. You all sound the same. You're all telling me, work with me, I can save you time. Work with me, I can make you sound better. Well, yeah, that's what an editor does. Everybody knows that. What is on your website that's going to help you stand out? If you've identified your target audience and you've niched down. Let's go back to the photographers example. If you've niched down to working with photographers, your website and your messaging, it's going to be targeted to photographers. So it's going to be clear to me as a photographer when I land on your website that, hey, you understand me. You understand the world I work in. You edit shows for people like me. I want to work with you. Because all of the others, they're just telling me, hey, I edit podcasts. I can save you time. I can make you sound better. The person who has the messaging that connects with me because they understand my pain points and my industry, that's going to stand out. I'm definitely going to reach out to that company. So that's why niching down and having a pretty decent understanding of your audience and how to tailor your messaging to really resonate with them can help quite a bit. When you niche down, you might get fewer leads, but that's okay, because the leads that you do get are a lot more likely to go with you because you're offering something that's a lot more catered to them. So I can't stress enough the importance of your website when it comes to finding clients. Because if you don't have that website, a lot of people don't even know that you exist. And you don't have any place to point them to if you've met them. Let's go old school. You hand them a business card. You don't have a website on there for them to check you out. It's hard for them to do anything with that business card. Maybe you have a phone number. How many podcasters are going around calling podcast editors on the phone? I don't know. I don't list my phone number. Maybe some of you do. So if you do, let me know in the comments. But once you've got the lead, they've gone to your website and thought, you know what? Your prices are within my budget. I like what you say. I like what you're about. They reach out. You get the discovery call. And that's where it's all on you to do things. You can't rely on anybody else. You can't rely on your network. You can't rely on your marketing. Once you are face-to-face or on a call with the person, it's all on you. How you go about your discovery calls is going to have an impact on how likely they are to work with you. Discovery calls are essentially job interviews. Both sides are interviewing the other person. So we do need to be aware of that when we are doing our discovery calls. People don't like being sold to. So if you go in there and you're just trying to do a hard sell, chances are you're going to be pushing people away. You don't want to push people away. That's just not a good way to sign clients. A lot of times they're not going to care about all of the technical details about what you do. You start talking about the technical details, you're going to lose them. Usually the whole, at least our approach to handling discovery calls, is we want to ask them questions. We want to get to know everything we can. Who are they? What is their show about? What do they like about their show? What do they want to improve about the show? What are their goals for growth? What are they currently doing for marketing and promotion? All of these things. If we're in there and we're just trying to talk to them about, well, I edit podcasts, I use this DAW and this software, I cut the ums out, cut this out, and then I mix it and master it to -16 LUFS, you're losing them. They don't care about the technical stuff about what you do. They just want to be able to know that you understand them, you're able to do the job, and that they're going to trust you to do the job. The more we ask questions, the more we get to know what their pain points are, the more we can address those, and we can hopefully help them solve more problems than simply editing. And let's talk about that as well, because let's face it, the days of being able to just make a full-time living simply as a podcast editor, and by that I mean simply editing the podcasts, doing nothing else. That's getting tougher and tougher by the day because, like I said, the tools are making it easier for anybody to edit podcasts. It's a value add that VAs are offering, social media people. There's a ton of people offering that. So the best advice I have is start building additional skills that are going to help your clients. The more you can learn about marketing and promotion, the more you can understand about stuff like AI and how we can help clients implement it to streamline their processes. Even learning how to use AI ourselves to streamline our own processes. so that we're not having to spend as much time on all of the stuff. That makes it easier for us to be more efficient. If we can automate our invoices, if we can automate file transfer, if we can automate communications, and we can't automate all communications, but we can easily automate, hey, I'm done with your episode, here's the link. We shouldn't be spending any time writing that email. That can all be automated for you. So the more we understand our clients, the more we understand their pain points, the more value we can provide to them. And what I've seen over the last probably 3 years is there's a lot more demand for podcast managers, people who can help with more than just the editing, people who help with generating the social media content, the reels. I guess audiograms probably aren't much of a thing anymore, but social media quote graphs or quote images. Quote something. I'm not sure. I've lost that phrase. But creating the assets, creating the transcript, updating the website with things if they're not using something like Podpage, which does it automatically. There are so many things we can do. Helping them with planning, ideation, just giving them advice on how to improve the show. Again, this is provided that, let's just go back to here. And that's provided that the client actually wants that advice. Some clients, they just want you to do your job, and that's it. They don't want to hear from you about, well, if you did this, you'd sound better. We have to understand our clients. The more we try to push things on clients, the more they're going to be resistant and might even start looking for other editors. So what I do when I start working with a client is I feel them out at first. During the discovery phase, I'll ask questions about, hey, do you want advice on how you can improve? Or what I hear? Or do you feel you've got a good handle on that? Because some people are very open to feedback, others not so much. Everything really does come back to understanding our audience, understanding our clients, and knowing how to work with them. I see too many people post, I don't know how to handle this situation. I have a client and their audio is horrible, and I've told them a bunch of times you need to do A, B, and C, and they don't do it. How do I get them to do it? Well, you don't. If they're not taking your advice the first few times, that should tell you that they're not really open to it, or they don't care. That's another thing as editors we need to understand. We care a lot more about audio than the clients do most of the time. So just because we think it doesn't sound good, the client might think it sounds fine. And if it sounds fine to them, they're probably not going to invest money in getting a better mic or learning how to use it, or any of the other advice we've tried giving clients that they tend to ignore. That's just the nature of working with people. Sometimes they take your advice, sometimes they don't, but we shouldn't lose any sleep if they don't. And if they give us garbage audio, stop spending a ton of time trying to make it sound as good as possible. Because if you're making it sound good to the client, they're not going to put any effort into making it sound better on their own. But I know I'm an outlier in my thinking with that. I've standardized my whole approach. So if you give me garbage audio, it's going to get the same treatment as the person who gives me really good audio. I'm doing really basic noise reduction, and that's it. If you've got your window open and you've got lawnmowers going and neighbors screaming kid outside, oh well. If DX Revive Pro doesn't take it out, that's going to be left in there. I'm not going to put in extra work to make your bad audio sound better. I'm going to treat you like the people who give me good audio. I'm going to go through best practices, clean it up, EQ it, compress it, clean up mouth noise, deplosive, whatever's needed, and then I move on. I'm not putting any extra effort into your bad audio. If I did, I'd have to charge you more. But usually, most podcast editors, they charge the same amount regardless of the audio quality. So, does it make sense to put more work into bad sounding audio if you're getting paid the same amount as someone who gives you good audio? If you're doing more work, you should be charging them more. Editors do this if the file's longer because you have to do more work. But I don't see many people who are charging because their client gives them bad audio. Just something I've noticed. And I know we've kind of gotten off tangent, a little bit off the topic of how to find clients. But that's what it all boils down to. We've got two methods, inbound, outbound, and usually the best approach is going to be where we blend the two. Marketing, that's something that you can't just turn on and off when you need it. Marketing is something that is important. Marketing, your branding, all of that is going to help you whether you're using Fiverr and Upwork or you're using inbound marketing approaches. But regardless, if you're trying to turn your podcast editing into a full-time business, marketing really does need to be part of your approach now. 20 years ago, 10 years ago, marketing probably wasn't needed. But today, there's so much competition, you really can't not market yourself anymore. You might be able to, but it's going to be much tougher if you aren't. For those of you who are watching the replay, let me know in the comments what you struggle with when finding clients. What types of things are you doing that have worked? What types of things have you done that haven't worked? Let's start a conversation, because I see this topic of how do I find clients come up all of the time. And most people ask, how do you find clients? And most of the responses are, I get them from word of mouth or through referrals. A few people talk about, I get them through in-person networking, but that's about it. In 2025, we need to look at all of the different methods and find what works best for us. For me personally, I'm not great at in-person stuff. It's just not a skill set I was born with. So I lean more into content marketing and online networking. That's how I find my clients. Some have come from my network, and those are always the best ones because they don't take any work. But they are few and far between if you don't have a large network. They're few and far between if you don't have a full roster of editing clients. And that's one of the things that I didn't touch on with outbound market or outbound lead gen. And it's a numbers game. You need a ton of outreach to turn that into a client, because you're going to talk to a lot of people who don't have a podcast. You're going to talk to a lot of people who are interested in your services. If you're doing cold outreach, you're going to have to reach out to hundreds of people minimum to find one client. So there's going to be an investment of time there. For me, I like to put that time and effort into my marketing, because that's always working, and I can reach more people that way. The internet is a much bigger place, but it does take more work. It does take more skill to be able to do that at a high level. I know you were probably tuning into this, hoping there was some secret, some magic approach, and there isn't. Anyone who is telling you so is just trying to sell you something. They might have an approach that's worked for them. Maybe it's an approach that's worked for others. It might work for you. It might not. It's up to you to do as much research into things as you can. If you find someone whose approaches really resonate with you, by all means, find out how to work with them, get their course, get coaching, whatever. But don't just look at a website, read it, and go, oh, they can help me find all the clients I want. I'm going to buy their course or sign up for their membership. People who are selling memberships and subscriptions, they're going to make the copy and the messaging sound really appealing, like we were talking about with your own website, how having a target audience and tailoring your messaging to those people, that's what's happening when you go onto these websites for courses and memberships. They're going to tell you about the pain points you're feeling. You go, yes, I'm struggling to find clients. And then they have something else about, well, you can make good money as a podcast editor, or whatever it is. You go, okay, I want to make more money. I want more clients. Where do I sign up? Just go into it. Usually, I recommend testing the waters first. If they sell a monthly option, go into it for a month. See what it's about. See if you think it's valuable to you before committing to a full year. And there are people out there who are really helpful, who know their stuff. There are others who, I guess a good example for me would be Tara and I have watched a lot of content from the future. Oh no. I guess I stopped streaming to Facebook. Hey, Facebook users, sorry about that. But we've done a lot of future stuff. We were in their future boot camp. We've learned a lot of stuff on how to handle discovery meetings, how to work on niching down, how to market ourselves, all of that fun stuff. But the thing that we've noticed is his approach doesn't work for everybody. Christo he can turn some people off because he's blunt. I'm okay with that because that's how I am. I understand. I'm not offended by people who are blunt. But I know some people are. So I'm using that as an example of why it's important to really try to find content that these people have put out there before you invest your money. Make sure there's someone you trust, someone that you resonate with, and you feel their approaches are in line with yours. Another example is, like I said, we focus more on content marketing. So if I were to do a course about lead generation, it's going to probably be aimed mostly at content marketing. But if that's something you're not comfortable with, if you're not comfortable creating content, maybe you don't want to be on camera, maybe you don't like the sound of your voice, working with me is not going to be the best choice, because you need a different approach, because content marketing is not one that works for you. Maybe you're better with in-person networking. Find someone who is good at that you can learn from. And I think that's probably a good place to end things, because I feel like I'm starting to ramble a little bit. But yeah, it's not easy to find clients. It takes time and effort. Fiverr and Upwork, they're going to be probably the easiest place to start. But there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of pressure to be the cheapest on there. And it takes time to build up a reputation. In-person networking, that can be great, especially if you're good in that kind of setting. Especially if you choose places to focus your networking where there's not going to be as many podcast editors. Local meetups, specialized conferences around industries that are not podcasting. And then you've got more of your inbound marketing type stuff. Like I said, the best approach is to probably blend parts of all of those together. But it's up to you to find what works for you, and only you know yourself. Only you are going to know what's going to be the best approach for you. And I wish you all the best of luck, because podcast editing is a good way to make some money. I'm not sure how feasible it is to make a full-time living from if you're getting started right now. It's a really good side hustle, additional income source, but I feel like in the long run, editing is going to become a very low-value service. It's already commoditized. Give it a few more years, and I think it's going to become a low-value thing, and we're going to be competing with VAs and social media managers for clients, and that's not a place I want to be. And since I have to charge more because I am self-employed, I live in an expensive part of the US, I have to charge more. Makes it more challenging to find clients who value editing and have the budget for what I have to charge to make it feasible. So pricing does also come into this. People who live in cheaper places, who have lower cost of living, you're going to be in a much better situation to land clients because you don't have to charge as much. So if you're in those situations, use that to your advantage. I can't compete with people who charge $150 an hour. I just can't. So that means there's more clients for you if you can charge $150 and it's still profitable for you. Pricing, that's a whole other conversation, but I did want to put that out there because pricing does impact your ability to sign clients. If your costs too much, you're not going to find very many leads who have your price in budget. That came out weird. There are going to be fewer clients who can afford your rates. For me, I'm in that odd place where basically I have to work with businesses, so I'm competing with large agencies for business. And I can't really compete with those either because they've got much larger marketing budgets, they have teams, and they have a lot more time to be able to do things. So the flip side of that is people who, I talked to someone a couple weeks ago about some podcast adjacent work. And I'd asked if he had an editor. He's paying a VA, I think he said something like $12 an hour to edit his show. I can't compete with that. $12 an hour. That's insane to me. But that's the world we live in. And if you can charge $12 an hour and be profitable, you can have a ton of clients out there who can afford you. Me, at $300 an episode start price, I don't have that many options out there. That's why I'm looking into all of the, not looking into, that's why we've split up our income generating methods, so we're not putting all of our eggs in any one basket. Diversification of revenue streams does help, at least for us. Maybe it will for you, maybe not. So many things that come into play here. I don't have time to talk about all of them, so I'm just going to say bye. If you've got any comments or questions, go ahead and leave them. I do answer them. And if you're watching the replay, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next time.